Hello and welcome back. I'm Natalie MacDonald and you're watching Sydney Direct on Dukascopy TV. While over in Europe, ECB Super Mario is talking stimulus, here in Australia, the banks are giving the RBA a little bit of a headache with their changes to variable home loan rates. For his view on the Australian economy and its outlook, I spoke to Stephen Milch of Suncorp Group. Stephen Milch, welcome back to Dukascopy TV. It's always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. Okay, so let's get started. We're looking at the NAB Quarterly Index of Business Conditions. We did see a rise there. Could it be that Australian businesses are finally getting a break?
Well, we've seen the business confidence measure increase, and that's a very good sign. I think it's probably too early to break out the champagne, but there's those green shoots there. The level of confidence is above average now. That's a really good sign. And I think there are a few things working to act against this mining slowdown that we've known about for a while. We've got record low interest rates, and that's obviously helping housing, particularly the construction side. It's helping the consumer. Even last week, we saw record high motor vehicle sales. We've got, of course, the property upturn. I've mentioned that. The weaker Australian dollar is helping the competitiveness of local exporters, particularly services. We may talk a little more about that later. But the other thing that's not getting a lot of recognition, but I think it should, is infrastructure spending. We've got at least $50 billion of infrastructure projects around Australia beginning to ramp up now. And again, that's a positive story for business. So I am quite encouraged by this business confidence number, or business conditions number, I should say, and I think it can be sustained going forward.
We did see there a slight slip in the confidence side of this reading. Now, a lot of that got put down to the timing of the result, which came ahead of Turnbull's ascent to leadership. We also saw this week that Joe Hockey left Parliament. Are all of these really those key drivers of confidence, or not so much?
Look, I think they come into it. Let's go back to that series, the quarterly series. We actually get to see the monthly profile. So although the quarterly number was down, the monthly profile showed from August to September it increased. So I think there is a bit of a Turnbull factor there, and it's positive for business. I think unambiguously the change of Prime Minister is good from an economic and financial perspective. He has those credentials, perhaps credentials that Abbott didn't have. And really my observation is, if we go back to the budget a couple of years ago now, the budget and the whole economic rhetoric since then became bogged down in this question of deficit and debt and the urgency, or the perceived urgency, to solve this deficit and debt problem, where I really think that was the wrong focus. Hopefully that's in the past now. Businesses are reacting positively, again, at least for the moment. So again, I see those green shoots. I think the confidence series, when we get the next quarterly measure, will corroborate the increase in the conditions measure. So current conditions are up a little bit, and the confidence should rise to meet that as well.
We had a pretty decent week this week in terms of really getting an all-round picture. We had the ANZ Roy Morgan consumer confidence. That actually again saw a little bit of a slip, which analysts there put down to a deteriorating outlook on the housing market. Is the housing market really in as much trouble as the equity market might suggest?
Let's first of all talk about that consumer confidence series. It's a weekly series. It's quite volatile. So I wouldn't read too much into one particular week's move. If you step back, the consumer confidence measure is similar now to business confidence. It's a little bit above average, so that's good news. On the housing market, there have been a few signs that some of the excessive optimism is coming out. We've seen the banks increased interest rates a little bit in the last few days. We've seen auction clearance rates in the last few weeks come off a little bit. But a market like the housing market doesn't go from very strong to very weak in a matter of days. What I think we're seeing is the market go from very strong to a little bit less strong. That's not a great cause for concern. Some of the underlying fundamentals are still very good. We've got record low interest rates, still notwithstanding the last couple of days a slight lift in mortgage rates. We have strong investor demand from overseas. And don't forget, they've benefited from the weaker Aussie dollar. That gives them a little bit of a discount on Australian property. We've still got a shortage of dwellings. We had been building insufficient dwellings for a number of years. That's still not met yet, not satisfied, that underbuilding. So I think there's still plenty of positives for the housing market. Just some of that excessive froth may come out a little bit, and Sydney and Melbourne in particular, may have a slightly lower pace of growth. Some suburbs that had seen really strong prices, they may come back a bit, but I have no generalised or no broad concerns around the property market at this stage.
You touched on a weaker Aussie dollar, and we are seeing that Aussie dollar over the longer term move lower. But what role is it playing in all of this? It seems to be making a pretty big meal out of that downward shift.
It's textbook economics. When your currency depreciates, it stimulates the economy, and we're seeing that. We're seeing it. Let me give you a couple of examples. One is tourism. We can track international arrivals and departures, and we get that monthly data from the ABS. Arrivals are running at double the pace of departures, and they have been for about 12 months. It's obviously more expensive for us to go overseas now, cheaper for foreigners to come here, and it's working. The other one is services exports. So moving aside from tourism, we export education services. We educate foreign students. We export financial and business services, whether it's accounting, law. We do sell those things overseas. It's showing in services exports running around 5% growth. Doesn't sound spectacular, but it's better than the rest of the export complex. So it's doing what it should. I think it is supporting the economy. Unfortunately, services are still only a small portion. They're only 20% or 1/5 of our total exports, but they are growing faster.
Steve, always a pleasure to receive your comments. I wish the Aussie dollar had started that move before I came over, but thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
Always a pleasure to receive Stephen. That is all we've got time for right now, but I'll be back with plenty more exclusive interviews for you. For now, though, it is goodbye.